Adlib is the DSP-agnostic buying platform to scale your programmatic campaigns smarter, faster, and more profitably. Adlib helps independent agencies and marketers deliver premium programmatic performance without the complexity, cost, or overhead of traditional DSPs. Their platform provides the tools, data, and automation to run enterprise-quality campaigns, from CTV and audio to geofencing and YouTube, all under one roof with zero trafficking headaches. Plus, they're not just a platform, they're your growth partner. The Adlib team helps you win new business, expand budgets, and deliver measurable ROI that keeps clients coming back. It's time to unlock programmatic. Join leading marketers worldwide who are using Adlib to deliver more campaigns with better results. Check out getadlib.com.
Hey everybody, it's Eric and Joe. We are fired up to have the Vanderhooks back on the pod, Tim and Chris Vanderhook, to talk about AI, talk about marketing, talk about the competition, just all that stuff that they bring. You are going to love it. By way of disclosure, Viant, where Tim and Chris are CEO and COO respectively, is a client of SharpPen, the agency that Joe is founder and CEO of. So with that out of the way, let's get into the episode. But also, for longtime listeners and all listeners, we have a special announcement for you at the end. So stick around after the Vanderhooks. You're going to want to hear this one. Thanks, everybody.
Welcome to Open Market, a podcast about building companies in the advertising industry. I'm joined by Eric Franchi and the illustrious and provocative Vanderhook brothers of Viant. Tim and Chris, how you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having us, Joe. Eric, great to see you. Good to see you guys.
Great to see you guys. Joe, what are we talking about today?
The SaaSpocalypse. Very, very ominous. Chris and Tim, basically everyone in and around Adtech is like, why can't we just vibe code your DSP? They think, the last 20 years of that work can just be thrown out the window. Your summary of that argument and then your rebuttal, please.
Well, I guess the summary of it is, there's different levels to it. The summary, I guess, is you can use Claude Code, give it a prompt, and say, create, this DSP's UI, which in theory you could do. You could have also hired a few UX developers and said, create this. It's just that you could do it with very little cost. So that's kind of that. And the argument is, it's just because I can copy your UI, you're out of business. But there's a lot of flaws to the argument. If you play it out, you can use Claude to create a UI. You can do that. But it doesn't mean that clients, all of a sudden everyone fires, you recreate Salesforce. Nobody would rather see someone recreate Salesforce than me. Like, this is the worst product ever. But like, every department's connected to sales. It's just, it is, would I call it a system of record? Yes. But they're like the poster child for this. But, the CEO of Klarna, like 2+ years ago, if I remember correct, he said that they recreated Salesforce and Workday. Then it was later like, no, you didn't. Let's just say the cost of creating software is rapidly decreasing, which is, I think, a great thing for all businesses. I think the SaaSpocalypse is a lazy narrative. Like, just because you have, software developers in terms of agents, like on demand for very low cost, does not mean that all software companies go out of business. There's certainly enterprise software apps that we have in the company that we use that are not systems of record, and I don't know why we pay for them. And someone should vibe code these guys right out of here. You build AdCP protocol, that's the concept, or MCP, that comes out. If an agent negotiates with a publisher, well, how does payment get handled? Who does the payment? So there's many other layers than just communicating, hey, I'd like to buy an ad, I'm willing to pay X price, here's the advertiser, here's the creative. To me, that's only one little sliver of what it takes to power the ad ecosystem. Payment terms are the obvious ones, like who's on the hook for the payment itself? Who approved credit approval for this random organization, which is a random website? There's so many more things. And I don't want to say it's never going to happen. The question is, when is it possible to happen? In the next 2 to 3 years, the probability of this happening is 0 to 10%. It's never 0 because someone can invent something, but very, very low. When I look at the future of DSPs, SSPs, people in the ad ecosystem, there's 2 things you can't really take away. And this is maybe fairly new in the DSP space, which is what exclusive data do you have that no one else in the world has? That's going to be very protective. If an organization is built around exclusive data that only exists, well, if you want to access that data, you got to buy the ads through them. Similar to retail media networks today with the great transaction data that they bring to the ecosystem. Separately from that, though, there's domain-specific infrastructure is what I describe it as, which is the RTB protocol today. And for you to stand up a DSP, stand up the compute power, handle all of the data processing, you're talking about a moat that costs tens of millions of dollars a year, which is why people are excited about AdCP. It theoretically could break down that moat. But when you take exclusive data and domain-specific infrastructure, that is irreplicable when it comes down to it, whether you're vibe coding or if you're just, got software developers and you're trying to build a DSP. It takes tens of millions of dollars in infrastructure to run an enterprise-grade, at-scale DSP. And all of the things like payment terms, all of that, these are all just, and also the reason why it won't happen in the next 2 to 3 years is because of these other layers. So to me, it's exclusive data plus the infrastructure costs are just too big of a moat for someone to vibe code a dashboard. Vibe coding a dashboard, fine. Vibe coding an entire infrastructure setup and trying to use synthetic data to recreate what is exclusive data, I just don't see that playing out in the near term.
Yeah, data and then infrastructuring partnerships. In other words, that would make it difficult. And I think that would be the difference, Tim, between the SaaSpocalypse argument as it relates to a player like, say, an Asana, right, which is down like 50% year over year, and a DSP is, to my knowledge, like Asana doesn't have to partner with 100 other companies and deal with very sensitive information and delicate diplomatic partnerships in the same way that an Adtech platform does by necessity as a sort of intermediary. Is that sort of why you would say the SaaSpocalypse might actually be coming for an Asana in a way it's not for Viant?
I view it as if you're a SaaS light company, meaning a dashboard, you're on the peripheral of an organization, you have a lot more risk than, say, a system of record, as Chris described. And I think it really just stems where you are in the ecosystem. I view DSPs as a system of record. It's almost the billing engine for making all the payments in the ecosystem go, the trigger to determine yes or no on a user when it comes across the bid stream. So, I think there are SaaS-like companies that are going to have a tough time going forward. But I think systems of record, exclusive data, infrastructure that is tens of millions of dollars. And let's talk about how much money do you have to spend in software development to recreate a DSP, or on the flip side, an SSP. You're talking about $100 million of software development to be an enterprise grade. That doesn't get vibe coded anywhere in the near future.
I think another thing that hasn't been brought up is most of these people who would vibe code, Salesforce, everybody uses Salesforce, but you could say that about a DSP. You could say about any interface or dashboard. No one's answered the question but you don't even know what to tell or prompt to build. Just because you have a screenshot of somebody's UI, I don't think that you're going to build something that then clients are actually going to use and adopt. Now, it may be your own internal software and you don't care, right? Like Asana is not, outwardly facing in our organization. We use it internally, so that's a possibility that you could sit and study that and someone could vibe code that. But also, what's my incentive to do that? Based on how much that I spend with Asana, am I really going to take my engineers to then go through a document and vibe code that? And again, can that be done in 48 hours? No. But what's the incentive there? I think that in the end, though, I do think that the SaaSpocalypse narrative that's out there on software quickly escalated to then marketplace businesses like DoorDash and Amazon. And in theory, that is also true. That was actually the first thing I ever thought about when I thought about, coding agents and all that was marketplace businesses. I mean, this is perfect for agents to go after.
Yeah, they're just cutting out those steps that an agent could do for a human.
Yes, but then play it through. Yeah. Why is an LLM, let's say ChatGPT, not going to replace Amazon? Because the fulfillment centers, the logistics, having the product on your doorstep in 3 hours, if you're just one component, sure, there's risk to your business. When you string together all of that infrastructure of what Amazon is, it's the consumers coming in, it's the marketplace of sellers, it's the fulfillment centers, and it's the payment processing and the delivery service providers to get it to your door. You can't vibe code Amazon, not overnight, not in a year, not in 5 years. And it's why they're going to always be around in a big way. And somebody else had said this, like DoorDash, when they deliver something that is not your correct order, well, you immediately go into DoorDash, say that this wasn't correct. They either refund you the money or they go pick up the product back at the restaurant. How are you going to do that? Also, consumers, and I think I agree with Eric Seufert, he writes this, that he doesn't believe in agentic commerce. I don't either. Why? Because consumers, why would they put in that level of work? Like consumers, I use DoorDash because it's amazing. It's so fast. They just get something. Oh, we don't have dinner tonight? Cool. Bam. It's no big deal. I'm not going to put forth the effort as a consumer to go through the work to vibe code and do all these things. I think that e-commerce, the way that it is in a lot of these marketplaces, they serve a very useful purpose for consumers. But I do think the AI apocalypse, which is what this is going to, it's not just a SaaS apocalypse, it's the AI apocalypse. And I'm a little conflicted in this because I do see the value in our own organization of the output and how much code is being written with AI and what we think it can get to. And I don't think this is like an advantage only for Viant. It's an advantage for all companies because they can adopt this. So I'm conflicted in that sense that I think for these guys, though, if you assign yourself to like the AI apocalypse is going to happen, what they're basically saying is that all businesses, if you listen to Dario Amodei at Anthropic, he's annoying at this point. 60 days ago, you didn't even know who this guy was. Now everyone knows who he is. Why? Because he's marketing. It's really interesting. He's marketing death and destruction, not to just America, but to all businesses globally. And we're going to see unemployment. I mean, he's tempering himself too. He thinks we're going to see easily 20, 30% unemployment. And hey, it's not Anthropic. It's just going to happen even if Anthropic doesn't do it, which, I think is genuine that he's saying. And he's kind of like, if people are asking him, well, what happens then? He's like, well, I don't know, but somebody should do something about it, like the government. But why is he out talking about all this fear and destruction? Because he's raising capital and he's trying to get the highest valuation. So to me, what's coming out of a CEO's mouth is usually good for business. So what's coming out of Dario's mouth is good for his business. But is it true? Not even close, what he's describing. Well, will unemployment go up? Is there risk to labor? Absolutely. Knowledge workers, if the law is simple, it's written down in books and an LLM can read it and translate the law for you. And look, vibe coding is real. It is. But I don't think it will happen in the way that whatever SaaS apocalypse, AI apocalypse, I don't think it plays out as stark as the sales pitch is. At the end of the day, I think that there's just a lot of reasons why I think a lot of these companies have significant investment. And even if some nerd in his boxers decides the vibe code, blah, whatever app, like coming out of college, we would have believed that. We would have been like, we're going to kill everyone. We're just going to vibe code.
Well, let's touch on that. Let's touch on that because I think the point you make about DoorDash is really important. That when I see like Silicon Valley people talking about the speed with which AI is going to transform business and society, I always think you are vastly overestimating the extent to which the average consumer, or even the average business professional, mirrors you and the people you hang out around, right? Like that is the problem, is that most people have very little appetite for change. They especially don't want change if it causes them the smallest inconvenience, right? And so it's like, even getting them to try something new is very hard. And think about all the, even while there's been massive adoption of AI, think about the massive resistance to this extremely useful tool. But then on top of that, if you're not just saying try something new, but you're also saying, and you need to create it in-house and make it work and solve all the problems that are going to arise associated with it, people are going to be like, fuck no, I'm not doing that.
With no domain expertise also. Think of it. You have no domain expertise. If I went to an equities desk and was trading it, I would get murdered. I don't even know where to start. How do I place an order? What's the first thing I do? And domain expertise is always going to be there.
And this is getting back to the Dario Amodei thing. Here's something controversial. What is commoditized today? It's obvious. The LLMs are the commodity. They are competing with open source. They are competing with each other. And here's some stats. I got a LinkedIn post ready to go on this in a day or two. When I look at our own usage of AI, our token usage is up a little over 10x. The costs of those tokens are down 78%. So where is the commoditization happening? The LLMs are the commodity. In any average person, you cannot determine the difference between Grok, ChatGPT, Claude, any of the outputs. They're all plus or minus within 5% of each other. And competing with open source, you've got DeepSeek coming out of China. So I think in the end, what everyone's missing is the LLM is the commodity. It's still a must-have, but there's so many LLMs now, you can flip foundational models at any time without much change in the output. And I think that's what everyone's missing. You have the foundational LLM that's commoditized. And where's the value going to accrue? The application layer that sits on top of those foundational LLMs. What makes a unique application? Exclusive data, domain-specific infrastructure.
Guys, talk about this autonomous future. So we're thinking the next 1 to 3 years are still kind of like a UI future or UI world.
Okay, so all of tech is moving towards autonomy, and that's happening. And that's along the lines of AI apocalypse, SaaSpocalypse, all that. And whatever you want to call it, it's moving towards autonomy. And we think that we've long held the belief that Adtech is no different. If you go back to our IPO roadshow video that is floating out there, 2021, yeah, Tim did not have hair in 2020. But you'll see us on there talking about this. Our North Star product vision was what we called autonomous advertising. And we talked about it. We, just like the self-driving cars to the vehicle, we believe that autonomous advertising will be to these programmatic, platforms. They're too complex. They were great originally because they offer transparency and control, but with all the channels, how many, websites, apps, the combinations are in the trillions, and it's too much onus being put on a human. Just like I can't compete against algorithmically traded, fund X in the equities market with my E-Trade account. I can't compete. I can't at all. So we believe that the market moved from managed service to self-service, and now it's going to move towards autonomous. And the reason is because it will produce greater results and higher ROI for customers with greater predictability or reliability. That's the reason why. If it didn't perform better than what a human could do pulling the levers, well, then no one would ever use it. There would be no case. But if you think about what CEOs and CFOs want, they want predictability in their results. They want to rely on them, and they need increased performance every year. Like they have to have it. And I think where we differ versus the agentic advertising that's out there today, we are agentic today. When you look at Viant AI, there's probably over 1,000 agents in the background. The difference is it's built on top of the RTB protocol, which is why we were able to make it live now, why customers are using it now. The market isn't looking for a new protocol. The market is looking for outcomes. And agentic advertising is able to drive those predictable, scalable outcomes that they're looking for. But it still rides the current infrastructure that programmatic advertising was built on. And I don't see that changing from now over the next 5 years. And there's another point around AI apocalypse, why we think it's probably overstated, as we said about Dario. When we market products, we've gotten a lot better over 27 years trying to bring clients to the future too fast, because what we've realized is that sometimes people just aren't ready, and organizations, as much innovation has been in our space, organizations move very slow. I believe with AI, I think every organization, I forget the stat, but it's probably 90% of organizations are playing with AI, but that could be because they have a ChatGPT account. But there are entire workflows and organizations built around, let's say, just in advertising. There's programmatic traders, there's planning departments, there's analytics groups, and whole organizations are built around these processes and workflows. And so you have to kind of meet customers where they are if you want to transact. So we were very careful about when we rolled out our new outcomes product, which is our first ours, and we think the open internet's first fully autonomous ad product. But if I went out and talked about it, that it was writing a new protocol and it was agentic and like that was the sales pitch, well then we believe that clients wouldn't need it.
I think what we're seeing is enterprise adoption of AI or agents is going to slow down. Why? Because agents are making mistakes. If you look at AWS, they had all types of issues because engineers were using AI to write code that actually broke AWS. And so now you're getting general counsels, privacy, the governance part of large enterprise companies are slowing down AI adoption to figure out how to account for all of these possible risks that are out there.
So I've kind of been thinking about this in terms of three pillars. There's unique data, right? There's the ability to drive measurable outcomes. And then there is the workflow innovation, which many people are describing as agents. What you guys are doing is everyone's talking about these three things, right? So then if you're an ad tech platform, it always becomes a question of how do you differentiate? And this is why, to me, autonomous advertising is one of the most exciting narratives and concepts out in the market right now, is because almost everyone is taking sort of the middle ground path of saying, well, you're going to have the human in the loop and, yada, yada. They're trying to not scare media buyers mostly, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah. So let's talk about that, because I think to me, that is what makes this an exciting narrative. And it's part of the current upward trajectory Viant is on, is that you guys have the gumption or maybe the honesty to say there is simply no way a human trader, even a very talented one, could compete with an AI that is working on optimizing your media buying 24/7 to drive better results. So talk a little bit more about the experiments you've run there and why that's the case.
Well, first of all, let's talk about what we did. We took the human out of the middle of the workflow. There was all these stopgaps for humans in the middle of the workflow, which slowed down decision-making. We wanted to collapse the decision-making and give it to the AI. But where do humans exist? Humans are at the front end of the process. We define the goal, we define the budget, the start date, the end date, the outcome that we're looking for, all those things in the guardrails around it. Don't run on these types of websites. They're brand safe. So the human just moves to the start of the process to advise the AI on the outcomes we are looking for in the guardrails around it. So we're just moving the human from in the middle of the process to the beginning of the process. That to us was not controversial, but when we said there is no human in the loop, everyone kind of, gasped at it. But how else could you adopt AI without removing the human out of the workflow? It doesn't improve the results unless you actually do that. So I think everyone will just end up replicating this in the end when it comes down to putting the human at the front end of the process and defining the guardrails and the goals and watch the AI execute.
I'd also say, take a look at what we did. What we didn't do was try and completely change the way our customers work and our current campaigns that work on our platform, which is all self-service. We didn't do that. Imagine if I went to them and said, wow, we have this unbelievable new platform and I'm forcing all of you to switch. One of our competitors does that all the time and it hasn't gone well for them. But what we did is we built a new workflow and it's aimed at getting into a new market that we believe we don't really tap into, which is the performance marketing market, right? 70% of all money spent in our space is performance-based marketing. 30% would be brand. And largely the open internet is predominantly in that brand category. But, if people on the open internet would actually pick their eyes up, I don't really believe that we're competing with the next guy on the open internet per se. You're competing against the walled gardens that are predominantly in performance-based marketing. And the advertisers that are placing dollars there, those are already somewhat automated platforms. If you buy on Meta Advantage Plus, you're used to not having to make every decision. You tell the platform what goal, what my return on ad spend is or CPA, and it goes out and executes it. Something very similar with Google PMax and Demand Gen. So when we rolled out autonomous outcomes, that's where we aimed it at, about breaking these new budget types or new types of customers. So we didn't really have customer friction there. And again, these customers that are buying that, they just want the results. They want improved performance than them having to do it themselves. And they want the increased level of reliability and accountability in doing so. And then we just so happen to identify that Meta and Google don't really show you much in way of transparency. And we feel that we have enough exclusive data signals that we're happy to show you where you run and what you got for your money and give you insights. And so really that was the way that we rolled it out. It didn't cause any friction with our current customers. And in fact, we had many current customers say like, hey, I have performance marketing dollars that go over there and I'd like to test this too. But let's talk about what AI does different. I'm giving you more of my LinkedIn posts, but I got plenty to say and I'll come up with other LinkedIn posts. How is an AI different than a human when it comes to media buying? I think all of us who have been in this industry long enough know most humans are looking for cheap reach when they go to media buying. They're looking for lowest CPM, maximize reach. When Chris and I analyze how is the AI buying differently than, say, the humans, it values quality substantially more. It's willing to pay higher CPMs, and therefore the results are actually improving. So the supply quality scoring is actually driving CPM yields up, and it's less about cheap reach. It's about paying the right price for the user that it believes is going to convert in a high quality environment for viewability, ad exposure, et cetera. And what you're seeing is the results play through. That was one of the biggest things that I noticed of the AI versus human is the AI values quality substantially more. It's willing to pay the CPMs and the results bear out versus, let's say, the last 30 years of advertising have been dominated by this concept of leverage media buying power to drive price down, which leads to cheap reach. And cheap reach doesn't deliver outcomes or the conversion rates that marketers are really looking for.
A comms observation. You guys are doing right now what I think, every ad tech CEO should be doing, especially in this era, which is to say, generally, when an ad tech CEO speaks out, the job is to define the future, right? Like, people get lost so easily in the intricacies of whatever is happening now, right? And when, especially if like the stock isn't doing well or something, they get mired in like defending it. And so they think about, what do I have now? And how do I make people believe that it's not a sinking ship? That's not the way to talk, right? At the CEO level, what you need to talk about is, here's the future of the industry. And we are building the technology that is going to bring everyone to that promised land. Right. And so to me, what you guys have done exceptionally well with the concept of autonomous advertising is precisely that. You've created a narrative about where we're going to go. And yes, we are not 100% there now, but you can see how we're going to get there and how the advertising industry and the media industry that depends on ad dollars would be in a much better place, especially vis-a-vis the walled gardens, if we were able to achieve that outcome. So when you look at the ad tech market right now, in my view, there's no other sort of scaled platform that is articulating as crystal clear a vision of like where advertising as a whole needs to go and then how they're shepherding it there. And if someone were listening at such another company, I would say that is where you kind of need to focus the storytelling, is to tell a story on this level.
I can attest, being CEO is a hard job. It's lonely. No one's telling you what to do. You have to come up with it with your own intellect, your own vision, and then figure out a way to communicate that. And I think what you're seeing out of Viant is clarity of that vision. Since 2021 of going public, we've talked about autonomous advertising, and it was theoretical when we went public. But piece by piece, we built the foundation and the building blocks to get to where we were with the Outcomes product launch. And I don't want to hate on other CEOs because there's been periods, we've been running this company for over 25 years. Certainly, there's been periods where we were confused on which path to go down. And I think there's a lot of confusion in the market. Where you're seeing out of Viant and out of Chris and I is we have crystal clear clarity on our vision of where the market is going. And we're able to run at 1,000,000 miles an hour down that path. And I think we're starting to separate ourselves. That being said, we're still very small compared to the other players that are out there. But you're small today. If you stick with the vision and you're right, you become big tomorrow. So to me, it's having clarity of vision that I think we have that some others are still confused about. And I'm not just talking about the bigger competitors that are out there. It's little entrepreneurs as well too, with smaller ad tech companies. It's hard to figure out through the smoke that's out there with Dario saying everything can be vibe coded overnight. So, just getting that clarity of vision, I think, is one of the hardest things. And then having the conviction and the guts to go out and say it over and over. We are just comfortable that we may be wrong.
It's possible we're wrong. And the moment we figure that out, we will pivot. I don't think we're wrong on this, though. The more and more we go down this path, the data that we get to learn from, it's actually a self-fulfilling feedback loop that we are definitely down the right path. And hopefully we'll be the biggest ad tech company ever created.
And I want to translate some of that. That does not mean that we believe our UI is the moat. Actually, the opposite. What we did with outcomes, like we rolled this out at what we have our annual conference called Viant. Man, we said, okay, we're gonna demo this, for the whole company. The demo lasts about 12 seconds, and that's it. It's not an impressive demo because there's really hardly any UI component related to it. You give us 4 pieces of information, and today assign your creatives, and then that's it. Normally, you go into a DSP, you need half an hour to 45 minutes just to stare at. It's work through.
It's a Bloomberg terminal.
There is a moat for a DSP. There is a moat, certainly, in your UI, certainly. But what we realized was, and that moat has been tremendous for some other players, tremendous. And we do enjoy some of that too. But we actually are attacking our own moat by going down autonomous. We are saying that I'm not going to get lock-in from you in the future by making you train on my UI and then never wanting to leave because you don't want to learn a new platform. We're actually attacking our own moat with autonomous. You give us 4 pieces of info. Now, what will happen at some point in the future? It does make sense. Just like today, we do have clients who API into our platform. We have that. Now, when MCP first came out, every time it was told to me, I'd say, right, like it sounds like an API, but for an LLM. Everyone was like, no, it's not. It's MCP. It's totally different. No, it is not. Once I heard it explained to me,
An easily configurable API.
It's an API. So we do believe absolutely in the future, would it make sense? And this is something that we will be early on, but I think the adoption is not going to be until further out. Like if you're using Claude, should you go in and see next to Meta of Viant skill and you're going to connect right there and have agents intersect with our platform? Absolutely. That's no different than clients who API into our platform now. No different. And if an organization has moved towards more autonomy with agents, then absolutely we're going to do that. Our main thesis, though, is that we believe that you're going to do that through our infrastructure because we believe that we're building enough value in the infrastructure that clients will want to intersect with it.
So as you think about the future of autonomous advertising and the lead role you want to play in that, let's call it like an autonomous ecosystem, like what the landscape looks like today. What are the other categories there? Like what other kinds of ad tech platforms will have a role to play in that future?
If you told me tomorrow that a Fortune 100 brand is going to adopt and like blow up RTB and they're going to go agentic everything, like I don't know anyone who's making that bet. Even the ones who are proposing it, I don't think are making that bet, right? That's going to take a while. I do think that what I've always liked in the ecosystem is, and I know where you're getting at, which is, like who are these infrastructure players? I think there's substantial value that SSPs can bring content owners and helping them monetize their inventory. I guess my bet is that I think you're going to see people who are on the buy side and those that are on the sell side because they are conflicting incentives in both of them. And that's you can't argue that. It is what it is. And anyone, if we're sitting privately, like talking to, anyone else in the industry, that we don't even have to discuss it. It's understood.
For me, though, I view it a little bit differently. I view this change from SaaS, software as a service, and who use SaaS? Usually service organizations that use the tech. And there was a statistic I came across that for every $7 paid by an organization to a service org, $1 of that went to the SaaS company and $6 went to the actual service organization. So who's under pressure? The service organization. And the future that I see is an advertising service powered completely by AI, and it keeps all $7, or maybe it's $6, so there's cost savings there, and it will be the most profitable business ever created because it will be powered by agents. You will have less OpEx to do it, but you're going to deliver the same thing the client got before. So I view AI-powered services as the future, less about DSPs and SSPs and what everyone does. Whoever builds a fully autonomous advertising service powered by AI is going to be in the driver's seat.
So you think the agency still has an important role to play, their costs go way down, or do you think that service shifts to another place in the ecosystem?
I think if they don't do that and don't adopt AI, it will shift.
You can't be competitive on price.
Right. I think that all agencies are eyeing this, if not already doing it in some way. All organizations are going to adopt AI. Again, all we're really talking about is what does that curve look like? That's what we're really talking about. I think in the end, tech is moving towards autonomy pretty fast. But when all organizations adopt it is anyone's guess.
And the adoption is also rapidly increasing. If I look at our tokens, over the last 3 months, the amount of tokens we've used is up 50% just in the last 3 months. If you go back 12 months ago, it's up 10 times, like I talked about, but costs are down 78%. So you're just going to keep seeing token usage go up. Like, whose stock do you buy? Obviously NVIDIA, obviously Google, who are going to be these elements providing the token usage there. But certainly for us, who is the customer of them, the cost of it is rapidly coming down. So when you talk about AI adoption, it's unstoppable. I think everything Jensen Huang is saying is absolutely true. I don't smell any fakeness there because I look at our own data, I look at what it must be from his purview, and we're just one organization in one industry. And so I think you're going to see all service companies token usage go up and trying to automate as much as they can. Does that mean they have no employees? No. It means you can achieve way more revenue with the same employees, or if you're a shrinking business, you're able to take out some costs to produce the same earnings.
Let's talk about marketing for a second. Yeah. So you guys have been, for the past year or so, like really championing this concept of going direct, right, to your audience, whether that's on LinkedIn or X, so on and so forth, even pods like this. With the way that the media landscape is evolving, why do you think like that strategy is resonating, and why do you think it matters so much today?
Well, the old way was you hire a PR firm, they beat down the door of trade press in any way, shape, or form, trying to get some attention from them. The new way is the trade press are consumers and they're active participants in the ecosystem, just like we are. And so when you actually have a point of view, it still has to be interesting. You can't be boring, not outlandish, but you got to have a point of view that makes people think. And when you put it out there in social media, the trade press is reading it as well. They can review the comments. When we launched Viant AI, there's, hundreds of comments on that video out there. And then the trade press knows this is interesting based on my readers because it already has some heat. And journalists are journalists. They ask tough questions. I obviously have all the time in the world to write a post. And if I don't like the way it's reading, I'll stare at it for a few more days. And I make my best argument and put my best foot forward. But journalists, their job is to understand what's interesting to the ecosystem. Social media enables them to get a good read on what's interesting. Not every post I make is interesting. I made one a couple of weeks ago and it went absolutely nowhere in the algorithm. And so I think a lot of people overthink it and try and make a perfect post. But when you make a great argument, the trade press is able to view it online. And then usually they call and want to ask the questions that other readers are thinking that you didn't really address in your post as CEO. And you field those tough questions. And sometimes you answer it well and sometimes you don't. But that's just the way the world works now, is social media is where we get our news, including the journalists. They're a part of that ecosystem. So by putting it out there, it is scary. I'll tell you, it's, before you make a post, it's scary. When we released our hip hop diss track, I had to have 10 people tell me, how bad is this? Is it good? Is it fine? Blah, blah, blah. Because you do get nervous, but I think you just have to be brave. Know that you've got a point of view anchored in something behind it, data, a belief, an opinion, whatever it may be. And then you put it out there and you're not always right. No one's right 100% of the time. But this is society and people cut you slack. No one's expecting you to be right 10 out of 10 times.
I do not believe that Tim is nervous before he pressed send.
The hip hop diss track was a little, first time.
Yeah, that was a big swing. It's also that, like, what's so interesting about what you're saying is that when you post on social media as a CEO, you're going direct to the audience, right? So you're already accomplishing the objective of spinning the trade journalists, right? Like the old objective was they were the ones who had the direct connection to your audience. So you would go to them and they would tell the story for you. You just cut out the step. You just go to them directly and then you get to speak however often you want, say it exactly on your own terms. But you're highlighting another argument for this new approach, which is that when you speak directly to your audience on social or via pod or whatever, you are also still doing the old thing. Like you're still reaching the trade journalists and tipping them off to what's important and driving their coverage, while at the same time, you're directly reaching your audience in addition to theirs.
Yeah, but in journalists, you can attempt to spin, but by nature, they're skeptical, by nature. So you can put your shiniest spin you want on it. I don't think we convince them one way or the other. They're going to usually take the opposite view, write down the questions because they're trained to do that. And I think as a CEO, you're comfortable handling the tough questions. Now, I do want to say this strategy doesn't work for every company. And, Joe, you're a big purveyor of this, of like, everyone's got to do this, but not everyone is interesting. Not everyone has an interesting point of view. Not everyone has unique data that they can bring an insight to the whole ecosystem, like I just talked about on our token usage and the costs that we're seeing and things of that nature. So I do think if you're an uninteresting person, it's hard to be CEO in the future because this will be required more and more of whoever's filling that seat.
I think it's easier for founders to do. I mean, it's no secret right now, and we've actually been saying this for years, which is it started with the press, but it really is becoming, the average even consumer. There's a lot of envy for founder-led companies. Elon's the best example that I would use of this. In Tesla, he did no market, like no traditional advertising, out there. It was just him. He was the marketing. And that has played fantastically well. And even, consumers love him, businesses love him. Like, I don't want to say everyone loves Elon, but everyone finds him interesting. And he certainly commands attention. And we are in a war for attention. I don't care if you're a brand selling stuff to consumers or you're like us and you're B2B. Look like Luli AI. I mean, they have mastered it. Yeah. I mean, that was an amazing video. But I will say, though, it's easier to do when you're a founder for the points that Tim said, but less if you are part of the managerial class. And I know that sounds like putting people down, but there's plenty of really good managers out there, probably better managers than us. But at the end of the day, we're the ones running the company, and it is our company, and we care a lot. I think nobody, would argue with that. We have strong points of view. I want to reach my customers directly. I want to reach investors directly, trade press directly, my own employees on a daily basis directly. And it helps me create really that consistent message out there and drive the business forward. It's been extremely valuable. I mean, we hear it all the time. Like, investors will meet for the first time. They're like, I'm not an investor currently, but I've read all your guys' posts. Like, I know the way you guys think. We've had, clients that say it to us all the time. Some of them say, I don't like what you guys say. And we say, well, thank you. Yeah, we're going to get to that. We're not going to be right. You aren't going to work with me anyway, if that's your point of view. So
right, exactly. And the number one risk is invisibility, right? Like that is what people in B2B never understand, is they're always afraid to be controversial. And it's like, probably if you say something people disagree with, like almost no one will see it anyway, right? So it's like, and that's doubly true for startup founders, but Dharmesh from HubSpot, after Travis Kalanick reemerged, he said, I've been in stealth for 8 years. Dharmesh was like, guys, please don't hear Travis say he was in stealth for 8 years and think you should be doing this. Like, there's no glory for the average tech founder in being invisible. Like, because Travis also says in the same TBPN interview that to be exceptional, you have to be exceptional at attracting capital and talent and all these things, right? And customers, of course. And it is infinitely harder to do that if you are not public. So for the average founder, you should be, I totally agree. Some people are better at this than others. Founder CEOs are usually better than manager CEOs. And if you have that advantage, you should be out there sharing the growth of the company and your beliefs on the industry in the most provocative fashion or most educational fashion possible with your audience, because that is how you're going to attract the people and the capital you need to win.
Well, let's just say, what are investors looking for today versus historical? Historically, if you were a great communicator or a salesperson, you were usually pretty good on the CEO side. Or if you were a technical founder and you were the CEO, that was like the two dichotomies. I think what's different today is what's required to be a great CEO and lead a great company from small to big. You have to be great at everything. You have to be great at the technology, at the product marketing, at the growth marketing, at the sales side, with investors. You have to be perfect across every single department, that you're the leader of almost each single department. And that's why I say it's a tall order for CEOs today, because investors aren't looking for you being good in one little sliver. If you're not great in every single aspect of the business, you ain't getting funded. No one's going to believe in you, and you're not going to attract not just the capital or the employees to come. A lot of people say like, oh, you're a micromanager. It's like, no. When you're the person who has the vision, you need to make sure the vision gets inserted perfectly in every single department. And if you think of like an archer with a target and you've got an arrow, if you're off by a quarter of an inch, you miss the board. And that's the problem. You have to be dead on across all of it, and you've got to usher the organization to go there. And that's what makes a great CEO, I think, and what gets funded in the future.
Eric and I, one of our first pods, I remember we talked about founding teams, and, he was talking about the archetypes of one to build, one to sell. And nowadays, the one to sell, it is not just I call up my buddies, right? And, working the founder-led sales network. It is also everything we're talking about. It is external communication. Like, this is a critical part of sales, and marketing and communications are blurring with sales. Like, you don't want... Like, sure, there are still some people out there who have 20 years of experience in the industry and they're old school salespeople and whatever, but the absolute elite people generally are good at both these things, the old and the new. So yeah, to me, the concept of the one who sells is expanding.
Yeah, very true. I agree completely. I mean, if you can't sell your product and you can't communicate its value proposition to the market or the differentiation, what are you doing in the company? Why do you have a salary? What is your point? So you should get bounced and replaced with someone who can.
Amazing. You guys fire us up.
Talking about anyone specifically.
All right. I think we're a couple minutes over, so we should leave it there. Tim, Chris, thank you so much. Always a pleasure. You always bring the heat. Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for having us on the pod. See you soon.
Thanks for listening to that pod. I'm sure you got a lot of laughs. The Vanderhooks always make me crack up. Eric, we have a special announcement for the people. You want to tell them what it is?
We do. Joe, we've been doing this pod for a long time. We have been collaborating. And, I've just been sitting back and really watching you develop an awesome business. So we've been talking for some time, and it's probably not going to be a surprise to anybody that's a listener, but I've decided to join SharpPen as an advisor to help grow the business, to help Joe in a lot of aspects. Joe has done a great job helping our portfolio companies, helping RLPs. He's been incredible. You, Joe, have been, very much on the forefront of where I think media is going. And I'm happy to join forces formally and work with you to bring things to the next level.
Yeah, thank you so much, Art. Glad to be announcing this. You've been integral to SharpPen's success for the past 2 years. We've been working together, obviously, sending us some business and doing the pod. But great to have you working on in a more concerted fashion. And as I said, I think, to the extent that this is interesting for our listeners, it's really about what we talk about all the time with our guests, which is like, this is about a new way of approaching media. It's about a shift in power from institutions to individuals, which we see happening across, politics, media, entertainment, et cetera. And what, we're trying to do at SharpPen is bring business in line with that, and specifically bring Adtech in line with that. So it's all about the individual now. It's about the CEO stepping up and being the chief evangelist and building a reputation for their company via direct channels like this pod or like social. And that's what we're doing at SharpPen. And obviously huge implications for the ecosystem and Imperium portfolio companies. And appreciate you collaborating with me on that.
Absolutely. I have only one advisor role. It is with SharpPen. So super excited to be along with it. And people, throw out the 2005 playbook. It's 2026. It's over. Come talk to Joe if you want to learn about it.
Honored. Come get some of that Vanderhook magic, people.
Bye-bye.